Smile real quick. It's a good thing. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. Non-rhetorical question. Who's ever heard these words before? Non-rhetorical question. What's the name of this speech? You don't need to be scared. Do you know the name of the speech? It's all good. Now, if you had one word to sum up what this speech is about, what would it be? It's not a bad guess. Here's what I'd throw out at you. I think Dr. King was speaking about a yearning for home. I think Dr. King was constantly speaking of a longing for home, for life to actually be home, for the world to look like the way it should look. Have you ever noticed that philosophers, poets, theologians, and filmmakers, they often describe the human condition as one that's looking for home? Think about the movie Black Panther. It touches the longing for a place where you're seen, where you're celebrated and safe, regardless of the color of your skin. That's home. The movie Avatar, it touched the longing for a world where resources, places, and peoples, they aren't exploited, but all creation can flourish together. That's home. The Lion King, God bless James Earl Jones. It touched the longing for a land where evil, self-serving, and oppressive rulers, they're kicked out and the kingdom can flourish. That's home. I think these stories, they resonate with us because they tell us that our longing for home, it's a universal human experience. You and I, we know this longing well. It's for our lives to be whole, to finally be at peace, to not feel angst, to not see the problems that we face every day. What we long for, it's called home. That's what Dr. King, he preached about on the eve of his assassination when he said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. Dr. King was picturing, he was seeing, he was casting a vision for home. C.S. Lewis, the 20th century intellectual, he talked about this longing when he said, if we find ourselves with a desire that nothing in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that we're made for another world. Or as the theologian from Kansas once put it, there's no place like home. In other words, our unsatisfied longings, they tell us something. They're telling you and I something. It's that we're not home yet. And let me tell you, this longing is not just for the Christian, it's not just for the religious, it's the longing of every people. Matty Healy, he's a self-described atheist, and he's the lead singer of this British pop rock band called the 1975. Some of you heard of him? Okay, yeah, they're a good show. He has this song in it called Love It If We Made It, where he sings about the ways where our world isn't home yet. The song's like, just it's mad honest. He talks about things like a culture that's distrusting, outraged, and post-truth. A prison system that preys on young black people to keep itself in business. A Syrian boy fleeing for his life, but washing up on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Can you hear the ache that he feels when he ends each verse singing, we're just left to decay, modernity has failed us, Jesus save us, modernity has failed us. With this haunting chorus on repeat over and over, saying, I'd love it if we made it. I'd love it if we made it. I'd love it if we made it. See, the modern and the postmodern world that we're a byproduct of, they haven't actually let us home. Even with all the technological advances and all the ways we can be connected and all the movements and all the progress, our world is still marked by anxiety, by depression, suicide, poverty, violence, distrust, isolation, sickness, racism, misogyny, and the list goes on. You know it. You experience it every day. Do you see it too? You know what I'm talking about? Whether it's in your own life, in your own experience, the things you know, the problems you go to sleep with, the things you wake up thinking about, the things that you see on the news, the things you see and your family sees every day. Maybe that's why both the atheist rock star and the Reverend Dr. Martin King are both naming a truth. We have not made it. We're still waiting, we're still wandering, and it doesn't look like we're close to what the child in each of us longs for, the safety and the peace and the flourishing of home. And if you understand that longing for home, if you understand that desire and that need and that felt experience that we live in a world and we have lives that are not there yet, if you understand the longing for home to finally be in the promised land, then you understand and you resonate when Jesus says those words in John 8, I am the light of the world. See, Jesus, what he claims to be is humanity's guiding light. Not one of many lights, but the light, the way, the truth. So listen, his point is not just that people would see the light or learn things about the light or go to a class about the light or admire the light or consider the light or speculate about the light or appreciate about the light or make a post about the light or even meet in a chapel about the light. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me. See, he's telling you that he's the light, not for you to learn a new thing, but so that you could follow the light. The invitation is to follow him, which kind of makes sense, right? Logically speaking, if he is the light, how helpful would it be for you to be in the wilderness or be in darkness and have a guide that you actually don't follow, right? Like, what's the point of waiting for the light if you actually don't follow where it leads? That's why Jesus' words, they're actually deeply loving when he warns, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness. See, Jesus calls life outside of his leading darkness, which makes sense, right? If he's the light, to be away from him is darkness. Listen to me, he's not condemning anyone to darkness. It's like the angry preacher with a picket sign on the street corner or yelling at a pulpit. That's not Jesus' tone. Jesus does not condemn anyone to darkness. He wants to rescue us from it. He's saying we're already in darkness. We're in the wilderness. That is my state and your state if we don't follow him. A problem is that sometimes we don't realize, or let's be real, we don't want to admit that we're in darkness. We're convinced that we can guide ourselves home, but actually we're stumbling in the dark without a clue which way is north. And if Jesus is right, then regardless of how much you enjoy it, or how well you've learned to navigate it, or how normal it is for the world around you, or even regardless of how right it sounds, if Jesus is right, if you're not being guided by him, then you're in darkness. Which means the question we must ask isn't, do I like what Jesus said? The question is Jesus right, and will I follow him? Take a deep breath real quick. Let it out. Jesus is claiming that all other roads, they aren't it. No one else, nothing else is the light, including the ways we want to lead ourselves, which honestly, it sounds intense or kind of exclusive because it kind of is, but exclusivity is not always bad, right? Like sometimes it can be helpful or even loving. Like if I had a rare terminal disease that only had one cure, I would not fault my doctor for the cure, not if he's right. Remember, Jesus, he's not angry, he's compassionate. So he lovingly pleads that without him guiding, we will die in darkness, which is a tough pill to swallow, but what if it's still true? Like, what if we're in darkness and we can't lead ourselves out? What if the 1975 is right? Jesus, save us. Modernity has failed us. See, I'm here because I want you to see that your heart's longing is for home. Like the deep ache of your soul, the deep ache that every problem in your life speaks to is a longing to get home. It's a longing for the world to finally be home, for your life to feel like home. And Jesus makes the promise all the more personal when he says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And I've come into the world as a light so that no one who believes in me would stay in darkness. Believe, we've talked about it all week. It's the Greek word pistis. The theologian Frederick Dale Bruner, he describes believing as relaxing into, like a trust fall. Or other thinkers, they explain believing as trust. Belief or trust isn't just for religious people, though. It's human nature. Trusting is the thing that we humans have to do every moment of every day. Your life and my life, it's built on the stories that we trust about what it means to be human. The story of Scripture then claims that you and I were in darkness, we're in the wilderness, we're searching for home. And at this moment, each of us, we're entrusting our lives to something to lead us home. And Jesus claims that he is the one you should trust to lead you home. So can I ask a simple question? Like, what are you trusting your life to? Like when you get the news that shatters your sense of norm or security, into pieces. Where is your trust? And when you get that like ambiguously critical moment, whether it's from a friend or a coach or a teammate or someone, a parent, and it pricks your insecurity, and suddenly your mind is racing with that combination of defensiveness and self-conscious thoughts that we all know too well. In that moment, where's your trust? What do your hopes, your anxieties, your joys, your fears, your disappointments, what do they say about your trust? It's subtle, but all of that, it's connected to who you think you need to be and what you think you need to be happy. All of that is connected to your search for home. Like for me, I've been noticing it in two ways in particular. I'm noticing it with money a lot lately. Like if I can be real, I'm noticing it in the ways where I'm at dinner with somebody or I want to do a thing and my wife makes a comment of like, oh, we should buy dinner, or we should be generous, or I feel that like quiet voice, that quiet idea, which sometimes is just the voice of Jesus going, oh, you should buy the meal. But in my mind, I'm like thinking about my budget and how much money I have and if I can afford to be, and all this stuff. Because somewhere deep in my heart, I don't really believe what Jesus says about being generous, that it's better to give than it is to receive, that he'll actually care for my needs. I believe a story that tells me I don't really know if I can trust Jesus. I notice it in work, and I notice it in relationships where there's moments where there's relational tension in my life, and it either makes me anxious or it makes me want to manipulate or control my environment or my world to make sure everything in my life goes right. And it always leaves me worse off than I'd hope to be. Why? Because somewhere deep down, I believe a story that doesn't tell me I can trust Jesus with my relationships. My point is we're all trusting something or someone to get us home. So what is it for you? What are you trusting to lead you to freedom in life? Now notice what happens next in the Bible. John 8 says, to the Jews who had believed, Jesus says, the truth will set you free. How many of you heard that line from Scripture before? The truth will set you free. See, I don't think Jesus is saying that when you know the correct things, then you'll find freedom or life or home. We all know that information or willpower and motivation, it's not enough to actually transform your life. Yeah, like we need knowledge, we need truth, they're vital. You have to live within reality to find life. But hearing truth and getting knowledge, it's only a part of the process. Notice the complete sentence that Jesus says that most times we leave out. Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, you really are my disciples, then you will know or experience the truth, and the truth will set you free. In other words, if you want to experience life or freedom, hold to his teachings. Put his words into practice. Do what he says, which starts with your thoughts, but it continues with your body, with your lifestyle, with your words, your money, your time, your relationships, your plans, with all of you. If you want to experience real life, do what he says, which I think so many of us in this room, we want to. Like, you actually want to live life like Jesus invites you to. And yet, haven't we all experienced like that gap? Like that gap between hearing and doing, that gap between what I want to become and what I want to do and the reality of who I actually am. See, I think our temptation today, and even this whole week, it's not so much to miss the light, to not hear about the light. Our temptation is to study the light, to go to chapels about the light, to pray about the light before a game, but to actually not follow the light, to not put his words into practice. Our temptation is to not hold on to Jesus' words. Eugene Peterson, he paraphrases Jesus' warning so well. He says, these words I speak to you, they're not an incidental addition to your life. They're not homeowner improvements to your standard of living. They're foundational words, words to build a life on. If you use my words in Bible studies and don't work them into your life, you're like a stupid carpenter who built his house on the sandy beach. When a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. Jesus' brother, he warned God's people about this when he said, don't be hearers only, deceiving yourselves, be doers. Our temptation is not to really miss the light. Our temptation is to not actually trust and follow the light, deceiving ourselves. Now, a number of people, they heard Jesus' claim, but they didn't trust themselves to Jesus, and he left the temple grounds. This is John chapter 9. As he went along, Jesus saw a man blind from birth. And he told his disciples, as long as it's day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. I'm in the world as the light of the world. Now, after saying this, he spit on the ground, made mud with his saliva, put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and washed, and he came home seeing. Jesus claims to be the light, to give sight, to be the one who can lead us. And then he encounters a man born blind. As you keep reading John 9, you'll notice something that's really interesting. And this has been like blowing my mind and like ripping my heart open and just changing the way I see my life a little bit. In John chapter 9, there's a question that's asked four times. I think that's like a literary device in the Bible. The writer of the Bible, the writer of this book of the Bible, wants us to ask this question, to think about the question that's being asked. Do you know what the question is? The question's this: how did the blind man receive his sight? Well, Jesus, he spit on the ground. He made mud with the saliva. He put the mud in the man's eyes, and he told the blind man to go to the pool of Siloam. Jesus told this blind man to go to the pool of Siloam. He told a blind man, like he spit in a blind man's eyes basically and told him to walk over there. That's borderline funny, but it's at the very least like disgusting. That's nasty. Like Jesus, this man, he's blind, and you spit in the ground, put mud in his eyes and tell him to go walk over there. First of all, ew. And second of all, why? Like put yourself in this man's story. Put yourself in this man's shoes. He's had a problem his whole life. Like as long as he can remember, this man, this is all he's known. This is his whole existence. It's been darkness. And Jesus shows up and he can heal this man instantly. He can fix the problem in just a moment. We know that to be true. Jesus has raised people from the dead. He's healed other blind people by touching them or by speaking a word. Jesus, the one who can call out and demons go running. This Jesus encounters a man who's had the same problem his whole entire life. And instead of fixing the problem immediately, he sets this man on a journey that seems peculiar or unnecessary or even cold. But imagine with me this man. Jesus put mud in his eyes, and so he already can't see, and now there's mud covering his eyes, and he begins to walk. And the scripture doesn't say, and we don't know, did this man like have to stumble there himself, or did he have another person helping guide him to the pool? But this man, he's walking to this pool. He has to go. He's blind. And could you imagine what would be going through your own mind if you were this man walking around? You've had this condition as long as you can remember. It's the only experience you've ever had. Jesus is there. He can fix the problem for you. Yet he sends you on a journey. And with every step, you're probably going through that weird feeling of hope that things could finally be better. Maybe this is it. Maybe I'll get the healing I need. Maybe I'll be able to see. Maybe things will finally change. Maybe my life could actually be better. Mixed with the fear of disappointment. Have you ever been there before? Where it's terrifying to hope again. It's terrifying to pray. It's terrifying to ask. It's terrifying to name a problem, because even just the mention of the hope for a better future leads you to the fear of disappointment. This man is blind and he's walking to this pool. And you can imagine him eventually getting there and having to feel his way to the ground and touch the water. He puts the water in his hands and he begins to wipe the mud out of his eyes. And for the first time in his life, he can see. He can see. The condition that he's lived with, the problem he's had, the longing, the ache that he's had for his whole life, it's fixed, not in a moment, not with a word, not with a touch, but as he went on the journey. How did this man receive his sight? Well, this man received his sight. He got his freedom. He got to life. He finally arrived. In order to receive his sight, this man had to hold on to Jesus' words. Do you see what I'm saying? This man, with every step on that journey, had to hold on to the thing that Jesus told him. He had to hold on to the promise. He had to hold on to the teaching. He had to hold on to the words of Jesus to finally get to sight. The blind man received light not just by encountering Jesus or by hearing from Jesus. He had to do what Jesus said. Actually, it wasn't until he did what Jesus said or he held on to his words that this man received his sight. That, my friends, is a part of what it means to follow Jesus. That's how we get home. We hold on to his words. Often following Jesus, what it looks like is taking one step at a time, putting one foot in front of the other, sometimes even going arm in arm with another follower of Jesus, even when we can't see or we don't understand or we aren't really sure how it will work. We hold on to Jesus' words. So let me ask you again, and even if it helps you, close your eyes for a second. Let me ask you again, are you following the light? Are you holding on to Jesus' words? Genuinely, like, ask yourself, think about it, just for you. This is only for you. You got no reason to lie to yourself. It's just for you. Are you actually following the light? Let me ask it other ways. What idol might have I put at the center of my life instead of Jesus? What part of my heart have I not entrusted to Jesus' leading? What topics have I been unwilling to dialogue with Jesus about? What teaching of Jesus is especially difficult? Like, if I'm real, what's difficult for me to hear, for me to follow? Let me come closer to home. What area of my life am I conveniently ignoring Jesus, assuming I know a better way home? Just for a moment, be honest with yourself. You can open your eyes. Yeah, I took a week away from being home to tell you what I wish I could go back to tell my 22-year-old self. Jesus wants to lead you to real life. And y'all, I've experienced it. Like, I'm serious. I have experienced the foretastes of home, the peace, the love, the security, the joy, the freedom of actually following life with Jesus. And what I don't mean is that my life has had no problems, or that I haven't had to go to a good therapist, or that I haven't had to work things out, or that every prayer has been answered the way I wanted it to be answered. What I'm telling you is that I've tasted and I've seen that Jesus actually leads to the life I deeply long for. Y'all, a lot of life right now, it is flimsy and it is fragile and it's like shallow. But what Jesus has to offer, it's actually so good. But sometimes it will not feel good and it won't always seem good, at least not at first. But if you follow him and you follow him long enough, you'll taste and you'll see what I've found and what so many around the world have found. Do you know that followers of Jesus, Christianity, it is the world's largest religion by a long shot, but it's also the world's most diverse religion? Like, when you think of a Christian, what should go to your mind is a woman of color in sub-Saharan Africa or in Latin America. You should think of the Nigerian 24-year-old woman who walks 3 miles to a church gathering every Sunday. You should think of the Latino mother who brings her children to Mass. To be a follower of Jesus is to be in the company of the poor. It's to be in the company of women. It's to be in the company of people of color. It's to be in the company of martyrs. It's to be in the company of people in the underground church right now. It's to be in the company of people who don't just look like you or think like you or live the world or the life that you get to. You're in a company of people who have gone through so much hell and suffering and hardship and have found that Jesus is actually telling the truth when he says that he is the light of the world and he can lead you home. So what I'm here to tell you this week is simply this. If you're not following Jesus, I just invite you, follow him. And then don't quit the walk too early. Remember, he's leading you to life. So don't quit following. Walk where he tells you to walk, and then just hold on long enough to see how he leads to life. Now hear me, and I'm going to end in a strange way. The irony of John chapter 9 at the end of it is that the man who was humble enough to trust and walk, even when he didn't see ahead of him, ended up being able to see. While those who claimed to see but would not trust Jesus were the ones who were actually blind and left in darkness, all because they did not trust that Jesus is the light. That is what Jesus is claiming. And we need to wrestle with it. Because he's either a liar, like Jesus is either lying and he's wrong and we should not believe him, or he's telling the truth and we should bank everything on him. So could you imagine what your life might look like if you began to trust Jesus with all of it. Like, could you imagine what it would do for your hopes, for your fears, for your disappointments? Could you imagine living a life where success didn't cause you the anxiety of having to repeat it or hold on, and also any form of failure, any mistake, any shortcoming, anything that held you back, any disappointment didn't have to crush you because this isn't all there is? Could you imagine what your life would look like if you began to trust Jesus? I asked you earlier this week, how will you know you've arrived? Jesus says that you're wandering in darkness and everything else will overpromise and underdeliver. But he claims that he is the light to follow. He is the light of the world, and it's him alone. All other lights, they're not going to do it. So the question we must ask is not, do I like what Jesus said? The question is Jesus right? And will you follow him? Is he right, and will you follow him? And family, and be real, you can answer no. That's okay. But you have to answer for yourself. He's either a liar, you should throw away everything that he says, or he's telling the truth and you should bank everything on him. Would you stand with me? For the last time this week, would you just close your eyes for one moment? And only if it helps you, would you put your hands in front of you, just as a way of posturing your body, of being open to the voice of God who wants to speak directly to you. Would you take a deep breath in and let it out slowly? And let me ask you just a couple questions. And again, you have no one to lie to but yourself. You have no one to be honest with but yourself. It's just for you. So just for a moment, with your hands in front of you, your eyes closed, if you'd like, take one more deep breath in and let it out slow. I'm telling you right now, there is a God who holds this room together, who holds each of our bodies together, who holds Chicagoland together, he holds the world together. And he says that he's coming again, and he's coming soon, and he's coming quickly. He says that he's gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. He's closer than the breath you breathe, and he's more knowable than the shirt on your back. And he claims to be the light that can lead you home. He claims that he's worth putting at the center of your life. He claims that he's telling you the truth, and the only thing he wants to do is to love you and lead you to the deepest form of happiness defined by him that you could ever imagine. So I want to ask you, just in the quiet of your own heart, what are you following? What are you following? What's sitting at the center of your life? And again, just be honest, it's just for you. What are you trusting today to lead you home? Like, what is your life built on? What is it built around? What is your heart going for? How will you know you finally arrived? One more time, deep breath in. Let it out. To those questions, Jesus asks you one simple thing, and it's this: come and follow me. And again, just in the quiet of your mind, with your eyes closed for one more minute, thank you for participating. Hear his words, come and follow me. And I want you in the quiet of your mind to answer that. For some of you, the answer is just no. I don't want to. That's okay, be honest. For some of you, you've said yes before. For some of you, you've never said yes. Just think about his question, come, his invitation, come and follow me. He wants nothing but good for you. Now, with your eyes closed in just one more moment, I do think that some of you want to follow Jesus. Either you have before and you stopped for this reason or that, or for others of you, you've never actually followed Jesus before, and you're not even fully sure like what all of that means, but you're this week going, maybe I'll give that a try. And if you're with every eye closed, just for one moment, if that's you, where you're saying, I want to follow Jesus, either I've never done it before, or I want to keep doing it, or I need to join in, would you just 1 second just look at me? No one else will see you but me. Just I want to make eye contact with you. If that's you. And again, you don't have to do it. You don't need to say yes. But you're saying, I actually want to follow Jesus. I want to give following Jesus a try. Just look at me for one moment. Thank you. That's cool. That's beautiful. Thank you for your honesty. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I want to say thanks for the opportunity to get to be here this week with this group of people, most of whom I likely may not ever see again. But I know that you care about them more than I ever could. And you desire good for them. So, Jesus, I do ask that those who follow you, would you show them that you really lead them to life, that you really lead them home? Would, as they follow you, would they find out that you're actually better than they could imagine, and you deliver on every promise, sometimes different than we could expect, but better than we could hope for, I pray. Now may you be good hearers and better doers. May you love Jesus deeply. May you trust what Jesus says. And may you follow Jesus well. Amen.